In high school, my baseball coach used to love making us do wind sprints. For those of you who've never had the pleasure, a wind sprint is when you run all out as hard as you can until you're just about to pass out. And then you slow down to a jog in order to catch your breath so that you might repeat this insanity another 15 to 20 times. My coach would line us up in pairs, 2 by 2 in the gym, and then have us start jogging around the perimeter of the gym. He'd make the first 2 in line, then do a wind sprint until they caught up with the back of the line. They'd yell go, and then the next 2 in the front of the line would repeat that process. We'd do that over and over and over again until we were all delirious with exhaustion. There are a few things in life I dreaded doing more than wind sprints. It was a pain like few others I've ever experienced. In fact, I remember times when I was so lightheaded and nauseous that I felt like with every next stride I took, I was just going to collapse dead right then and there on the spot. In fact, at that point, death would have been preferable. But the funny thing about wind sprints is, as painful as they were, they never caused me to ask why. Why, oh Lord, do you allow wind sprints? I knew perfectly well why. They made us better baseball players. But this is exactly what the question of suffering does. The reality of suffering does. It forces us to ask why, to seek an answer to whether or not God is real and whether he really loves us. See, there's 2 distinct things that happen when we suffer. There's the actual pain of it, and then there's the existential angst that pain creates. The fear that there is no God, that our lives have no point or meaning, that in the end we're just fleeting blips on a cosmic radar screen. Of course, for those religions that believe in a personal God, they have an answer to this suffering question. They say that God created human beings with free will in the hopes that they would love him in return. And that comes with the risk that they can reject him, which causes evil, and that's the source of suffering. This explanation in principle is great. It really works. And a lot of the suffering we see around us can be explained by the abuse of human free will. But so much other of the suffering we see around us is just utterly incomprehensible. How could a loving God allow a little child to die of cancer? How could a loving God allow tsunamis and mass shootings and genocide? We'll never get good answers to these questions. The enormity of such suffering is just too staggering to make any sense of. Suffering, hands down, is the greatest obstacle to belief in a loving God. That's why in college I rejected God and went on a quest for truth. I determined that there's no way I was going to believe in God unless I could get an answer to this question, unless I could get the how and why of suffering figured out. But as I pursued my quest, that answer never came. I never got that logical explanation. Instead, I got something exceedingly better. I eventually came to see that Jesus, who he is and what he's done, is the definitive and only satisfying answer to this question. In the face of the incomprehensible mystery of suffering, Jesus himself embodies the answer that we are really looking for. Instead of giving us a logical explanation, an explanation that finite creatures like us probably couldn't understand anyway, Jesus shows us a depth of love that no suffering, no matter how incomprehensible, can ever call into question. A depth of love that goes way beyond our wildest imagination. I didn't get a why answer to this question. Instead, I got a who. And in the end, ultimately, that's what we're looking for. We don't need a logical explanation. At the heart of our existential angst is this need to know that there really is a God who really loves us and has some kind of purpose or point to our lives. Jesus simply bypasses the why question and goes right, literally, to the heart of the matter. In the midst of his own incomprehensible suffering, he puts the question of God's love for us to rest forever. The way Jesus does this is primarily in 3 profound ways that I can't in a single blog unpack, but I will begin to unpack one of these ways in next week's blog. Christian faith, Christianity, makes a radical claim. It says that for the Christian, suffering is no longer an objection to belief in God. It's no longer an obstacle to believing in a loving God. To be sure, suffering still poses a formidable challenge for the person who believes in Jesus. It can be agonizingly painful and utterly perplexing, but it no longer has the power to create that existential angst. It no longer has the power to create doubt about God's love. Jesus meets suffering head on. In light of who he is and what he's done, this seemingly insurmountable obstacle that incomprehensible suffering poses to belief in a loving God just evaporates in an instant. I would love to hear what you have to say about this blog or any other. Please go to the Contact EJ page of this website, or you can go to the Raising Jesus Facebook page and leave your comments or questions there. Thank you.